Okay, the next speaker is Adrian Crenshaw. Adrian has worked in the IT industry for the last 12 years. He runs the information security website Iron Geek, which is what we should all know him about, which specializes in videos and articles that illustrate how to use various pen testing security tools. He did the Cert Chase for a while and has a whole bunch of stuff, but stopped once he had to actually pay for them and stuff.
Smart guy.
He's currently working on his master's in security and informatics. Where's that at?
IU Bloomington.
Okay. And is interested in obtaining a network security research teaching job in academia. Everyone give Adrian a hand. Thanks.
Hope everybody's doing well today and enjoying the conference. I know I am. And the pizza, which Canada people really enjoy the pizza. Don't forget, that's a donation job. Anyway, a while back, Dale asked me, okay, so what you would talk about at the conference? And I started thinking about this. Well, I was working on a bunch of different boot CDs and USBs, and I was about to give a talk on that, but it was going to be a very general talk, like what's out there. And I started messing around with a tool called WinBuilder. But in that talk, I really didn't have the time to go in depth. As it stood, it was like an hour and a half talk, and I barely scratched WinBuilder. So I was like, I really want to get into WinBuilder and show people how they can take, let's say, a Windows 7 install media and make a bootable USB or DVD they can run any kind of security tool with some work off of it. So that was my subject matter for this talk. First of all, a little bit about me. Jared did a good job of doing the intro. I run IronGeek.com. I have an interest in InfoSec education. I don't know everything. I'm just keeping time in my hands. I'll probably get a few things wrong. If I do, come up to me after the talk, and I'd love to hear what's what. Also, I'm a regular on the ISD podcast. They do the podcast 5 times a week. I'm usually on there only on Thursdays, but you never know when I might pop on. Okay, first of all, why might you care about making a boot device that can run Windows? I mean, a lot of us already have Linux-based devices. Let's say Backtrack or Ubuntu or something like Helix. Death, I think, would be something a little bit more up-to-date. You use running those kind of things off a boot device. But sometimes there's that one particular Windows tool you just feel like you got to have. Well, that's not necessarily outside of your reach either. A whole bunch of reasons why you might want to be able to do this. Malware removal would be one. Sometimes the machine just gets so hosed you cannot remove everything off of it from the operating system that's on it already. It's just you remove something, something else gets automatically installed. It has a process sitting there waiting going, ooh, you're trying to get rid of me. Now, if you boot from a no QoS though, you can clean off anything you want. It's kind of a pain to pull a hard drive out of a machine and put it into a new machine. Much easier just to boot from a DVD or USB. Forensics, sometimes you might be able to Windows forensics tool you want to run. Really, you're best off pulling the drive, using the blind box, or doing everything right. But sometimes this might be a quick job. You just want to figure out, all right, what was going on this machine. And if you're not worried about chain of custody rules and all that, there's certain times when this can be useful. Privacy, sometimes you don't want to leave a record. And if you're booting from read-only media, well, you're not going to leave a record on that. The only record you're going to leave is in memory, and as long as the machine gets shut down and stays off for a few seconds, you're good to go. So for privacy, these bootable devices are quite handy, especially if you're using someone else's machine. Completely legitimately, if you're at a public library and you want to do certain things and you don't trust what they put on there. Okay, access to restricted tools. Sometimes I'll on a system and the tool I want to use has AV on it and instantly removes it. That's a bit of a pain, or I'm not an admin on the box and there's a certain tool I have to be admin to run. I can run that from a DVD or a USB. Imaging, of course, is another one. I use my boot devices for running Ghost and imaging stuff, but there's other imaging tools you could use. Physical access, of course, equals pwnage. If you have physical access to a machine, what's the old maximum? If someone else has physical access to your machine, it's not your machine. That very much applies. Also, you may want to worry about these guys coming to make a visit. I'm I'll be right back in a second. Okay. That was actually taken at HackerCon in West Virginia not quite a year ago. Come to HackerCon 2 if you get a chance. And a few other conferences I'll mention later on. Okay, there's a couple of ways you can make a Windows-based boot USB or CD. The one I'm going to show off in this particular talk is using WinBuilder and the Windows 7p SE project to be able to create this boot media. Essentially, you can create a USB, a DVD, a CD if it's cut down enough, but with this OS. What OS you need to start with depends. Now, I'm using the Windows 7pe project. I believe the requirement is, of course, Windows 7, either 32-bit or 64-bit. I think I read someplace that some people may have gotten to work with Vista as well. I'm not sure. But let's just use Windows 7. There's other projects underneath the WinBuilder heading that actually use Windows XP or Windows Vista or some other thing. It's the base OS. And WinBuilder is essentially a framework for putting together scripts that will suck the stuff you need out of install media and also out of the Windows WAIK, which I'll explain in a bit, and put it together into a bootable media. You can even build up stuff to, I'm using Windows 7 Service Pack 1 32-bit for most of my creations, but you can also use 64-bit if you want. And it's kind of hardcore, roll your own. You kind of have to get a little bit into the scripting language to do everything you want to do. Essentially, WinBuilder is just meant to be a project for helping you create these boot media, and Windows 7 PE is a specific set of scripts that's sort of like a distribution you can use with WinBuilder. Okay, what is Windows PE? Well, Windows PE is a Windows pre-installation environment. The idea was it'd be something that, beyond just having a text mode installer, someplace where you could have a few more options as far as choosing what to install, being able to do certain tasks ahead of time, like how you want to partition drives and so forth, but also to be an environment for getting onto a system and having the bare Windows functionality you might need to run certain tools like malware removal and whatnot. If anybody wants to download Windows Automation Installation Toolkit, you can go out there and get it. That's why I called WAIK earlier. I'm not sure how they want you to pronounce that acronym, but I'm going to pronounce it WAIK. Essentially, it's kind of a stripped-down version of Windows meant for installing stuff and possibly recovery and diagnostics, repairs, that sort of thing. Not all the Windows features are available, but if you know what you're doing and you combine it with regular Windows install media, you can probably get most of the features you want. However, it's very limited. Just it, you can create a boot CD or USB, but it's really cut down. I mean, you get like a command prompt and not much else. That's what other tools like Bart's PE Builder, or in this case WinBuilder, come in. You can basically take it and other tools, some scripts, a full install of Windows, and put it all together to make the boot media that does what you want. Now here's the basic layout of WinBuilder. You'll see up here in the corner the play button. Hit that, starts compiling everything. A lot of things you got to do ahead of time. We have the tools menu where we have various options about creating scripts, converting Bart's PE scripts, and tons of other little features. Download. One of the neat things about WinBuilder is you can actually download the entire project from the web. Essentially, you start off with just a little WinBuilder exe, and a lot of the projects you can point to a repository and it'll suck them down for you, which is really nifty. Number 4 there, I have to set a source. I have to tell it where my Windows install media is. I'll show you that in a bit. Basically, you have to point it towards some place where you've copied all your install files off of your Windows 7 CD. Number 5 there I'm pointing out is essentially a pane where you can choose what scripts. They're kind of like, if you're familiar with Bart's PE Builder, I actually ask this question. Who's ever heard of WinBuilder before? A few people. How many people have heard of Bart's PE Builder? Probably a lot more people. Think of a script as essentially being Windows, same thing as a plugin is in Bart's PE Builder. I'll probably be using the terms interchangeably since I'm so used to Bart's PE before I started messing around with WinBuilder. But essentially this pane, you can choose what scripts you want to run. On the pane I have labeled as number 6 over towards the right. You'll have settings there you can make on each individual script. In the scripting language, there's actually a way of setting up a GUI that you can represent there, so you can choose things like this particular background I want, or this particular feature I want installed, or this registry key I want set this way. So you can make a script that is configurable. Oh, 7, I'm pointing out where you can actually click on the little wrench icon and have it, you can edit the script that someone else wrote, or it's your own script if that's the case. The little play button there, the smaller play button, essentially just tests that one script, so you don't have to do an entire build. You just test that one particular script to make sure if it's functioning or not. That's real handy when you're trying to create your own. Alright, getting started. Here's a few tweaks you're going to have to make and some things you have to download to get your build environment up and ready. A few notes on Windows settings and AV. First of all, I generally turn AV off. And I know general opinion of people, at least some people have talked already today about AV not being as useful as it once was. When it comes to building your own boot media, especially if you start running all the security tools on it, turn AV off because it's a pain to have it start complaining every single time you're trying to copy something from Nearsoft or Kane or any of those tools onto your CD. Also, it probably going to help speed things up a little bit. I've generally, as far as I can tell, leaving UAC on Windows 7 when you're building seems to work okay, but if you're running into any complications, turn it off. Alright, things to download. First, we're going to need some Windows install media. Now, I had some just sitting around that was licensed to me because of a job. If you want to and you don't have that, I suppose you could try the demo code. I'm not sure about using that long-term and licensing, but if you just want to play with it and see how the build process works, you can go out there and download an ISO of Windows 7. I'm going to go with 32-bit for most of this. The reason being, it will build with 64. I've gotten it to work. But a lot of people doing testing seem to be doing it in 32-bit, and sometimes weird peculiarities pop up. Not to mention, I'm kind of proceeding under the assumption it's going to be easier to find drivers for 32-bit if needed. WinBuilder, of course you got to get that, and that's from winbuilder.net. If you want to try some of the beta versions, Paraglider has some out here at this particular link. Yes, these slides will be on my website, or if you want, come to me after the talk, and I'll just give you a copy now. Also, you'll need to get the Windows Automation Installation Kit, or the WAIK, as I was mentioning before. All these URLs you needed, and I'm going to put them in the slides, but they're not exactly presentation friendly. Also, the final thing you probably want to download is driver packs. Going down and hunting every single driver that you might possibly use on all the machines in your particular work area, that'd be kind of difficult. Luckily, these people have already done it for you. They put out tours of tons and tons of drivers for webcams, network cards, wireless cards, you name it, they have a driver pack out there for it. So you can just download a ton all at one time. If you're starting worried about how big your boot media is or how long it takes to boot, you may want to look into not installing as many drivers because it does take up space, especially if you're just not using it. But if you want to make sure you have a wide range of support with little effort, download some of these driver packs. And I'll point you in a second where you need to put those to actually make it all work. Alright, we're going to set up our build environment now that we got everything downloaded. So we got to put stuff where it needs to be. First of all, we've got to install the Windows Automation Kit. There's certain tools from that the WinBuilder Scripts I'll be running later will pull from and put into its own tools directory. I can copy it manually, but that's a bigger pain. In theory, if I install this first, the WinBuilder Scripts in Windows 7 PE should automatically grab it. But essentially, I just grab the ISO from the website I linked to earlier, unzip it with 7-zip. I don't even burn it to an ISO. Just unzip it with 7-zip, copy it someplace where you know it is, and you're going to point things there in a bit. After you unzip it someplace, just run start CD, next, yes, yes, next, yes, yes. Just like your average user whenever they hit a web page. Okay, copy your Windows 7 install media someplace. Find your CD, or if you have an ISO, unzip it, put it someplace, and we're going to point WinBuilder there in a second. Okay, you got to place WinBuilder someplace so you can actually build things. You can put this any place you want. My personal recommendation: create a directory on the root of your C drive called WinBuilder. The only place you really can't put it is inside a user's profile. So, no documents and settings, no /user. Don't put it there. But as far as I know, every other place is fair game for where you can locate it. Okay, after you got all that stuff configured, you can actually run WinBuilder for the first time. It's going to give you a warning about needing to be an administrator. Heed it if you're not an administrator. If you are an administrator already, you should be good to go. As soon as you get it up and running, it's going to, first time you ever run it, if you don't have any projects already downloaded, it's going to take you to the download screen and say, okay, what repositories you want me to start sucking stuff from? These are the ones I usually set. Update bootland.net, updates.bootland.net, Windows 7 PE, WinBuilder.net, so on and so forth, Paragliders for some extra utilities. And then I usually choose complete on the drop-down to suck down everything they have as opposed to just the recommended files. Now, me just saying that is not enough information for you to work with, and the live demo guides have bit me in the butt many a time, so I've actually canned the video of that step. So let me show you this. Basically, I run WinBuilder. This is the first time I've ever ran it. It warns me about the admin. I'm fine. Since it's the first time I ever ran it, it brings up the download center. I'm going to click off those repositories I mentioned just a little bit ago, and have to scroll down for the one from Paraglider. One of the main reasons I grab his is he has this really handy help file. I mean, finding all the documentation you want for Windows Builder can be difficult because most of it's in a forum system, and it's kind of hard to search around for. You see, I chose, or I had recommended chose by default, and I started downloading from those repositories just the recommended scripts I needed. Now, since we don't want to sit here and watch a blue line across the screen, I've cut that section out, and we'll continue on to the next step. Let's say you had updates. One of the nice things about having this repository system is if someone's updating a project, you can just fire up WinBuilder again, go underneath downloads, and update, and go look for any new scripts. Now here I still have the old session running. I'm going to close out WinBuilder, bring it back up, and when I bring it back up, it should have those projects listed in a pane on the left-hand side. It doesn't automatically bring up the download center. But I want to check for updates, even though I just downloaded everything. So I'm going to go underneath updates. Instead of recommended, I'm actually going to choose complete and suck down absolutely everything. You can also hand choose which ones you want to select by using those little check boxes. Okay, the one thing that on the Windows boxes I've been messing around with that doesn't seem to automatically grab the first thing you want in WinBuilder is BCD edit for editing boot configurations. Actually, when I was using, I'm trying to think how I'm going to phrase this in terminology. You have your source install media. This is what's actually going to be on the CD eventually. That can be 64-bit or 32-bit, but you also have your build environment, what's actually running on the physical machine you're doing all your creation from. That could also be 64-bit or 32-bit, and they don't have to match. I'm generally compiling all this on my 64-bit Windows box, and the CD I'm creating is actually only 32-bit. And you got to kind of know these to make a good judgment on what paths you need. But in my case, when I was ever building from Windows 32, it would automatically find BCD edit, as I recall. But for some reason on 64-bit Windows, where I do most of my building, it doesn't. I have to go into Windows System 32, copy it out, and since I'm building on an x64 machine, I have to move it to that particular path you see as the second blue line. If you're running a 32-bit system and a file comes up missing, you just change which path you use. It's to x86 as opposed to x64. Okay, you can ignore this step most of the time. Most of the time it works fine as long as you have WAIK installed. Occasionally you'll actually have to go into the installation kit and grab these particular files from the path shown. I'm not going to read them all off. I'll have these notes up later on. It gets ornate. If things go wrong, it gets kind of ornate fixing things to make sure you have all the files in the right location. But generally you don't even need to do this step. It does it for you. Okay, let's start building it. First of all, we got to choose our source. We got to point to wherever we've copied our Windows 7 install files. Here you've seen I've done that on this particular little input box. Then underneath drivers, I choose where I have my drivers. Essentially, I go on the left-hand pane, find driver selection, choose driver integration, and open up one of these paths if it's 32-bit or 64-bit, and copy all my INF files and sys files there. They can automatically grab them. Now, the tool I'm using here, you can't have them in an archive, you can't have them zipped up, but you can have them in subdirectories to make things more convenient. On mine, I generally just put a bunch of network drivers and maybe some file system drivers so that I can access the stuff I need. The more stuff you throw in there, the bigger your CD is going to be, so keep that in mind.
Question, can you use things like RAID drivers in it?
Yes. Yes.
Before the build, can you determine how large it's going to be?
You actually probably is a way of calculating. I suppose if you sum up all your drivers and then you already know what the base install is, and you know, yes, you can calculate it, but it's probably less work just to go ahead and build it. And then after that, start going, okay, let's see what I can get rid of. That's my straight answer. The answer is probably yes, may not be worth your time. You'll know as soon as it's generated because you'll get an ISO of a certain size and you're like, oh, that's what it came out to. Okay, steps 3, 4, and 5. And by the way, I have these all out as a text article on my website right now if people need it. Under virtual test, these are a few tweaks I like to make. Under virtual test, you can choose what VM you want to test your ISO in, or you can disable it completely if you don't want to do the testing. Another tweak that you might want to look into is underneath wallpaper, choose a wallpaper. I usually choose my buff penguin icon. Under white media, you can choose whether or not you want to create a USB device. It's inconvenient for me to carry around a DVD or a CD all the time, so I usually carry around a bunch of flash drives. In my documentation, you see I refer to them as flash drives, thumb drives, UFDs, USB flash drives, and use that all interchangeably. I mean the same thing in all cases. I usually get these little things from, I think Super Talent is the people who make them. They call them Picos. And the lower rugged USB drives that I can easily keep in my wallet, and just easier to carry these in the CD. I'll be demoing those hopefully in a little bit.
What is the name of that? Where do you get those at?
Well, also people sell them. The company that makes them is Super Talent. And the Picos. But there's a certain type of Pico. So that's like a Pico C, a Pico A, and I don't remember which variety it is. I want to say it's Pico C, but I could be wrong. But I always choose create me a USB device, because that's what I end up usually using, and I keep the ISO around just in case I need it. Alright, once all that's done, we can actually hit play and go. Other pop-ups that are going to come up during the build process include, one, the VM. I happen to have VMware Player on my machine, so it would bring up the OS inside of a VM. Also, if you chose to create USB media, that's going to pop up. By default, it doesn't have quick format selected. Choose quick format, otherwise it's going to take a lot longer. No reason to zero out the entire drive unless you're worried about some kind of media that was on there previously that you don't want to leak out. Hit start, that'll format it. Another pop-up you're going to get basically asks you where you want to install the Grub for DOS bootloader. Point it at your thumb drive, hit install, and you should be golden. Now, as I like to demonstrate things a little bit more viscerally, but yet I don't want to tempt the demo gods, we have another quick video for you, which is kind of redundant since I already showed you most of it. Here I'm setting the source, and I'm essentially just pointing it towards wherever I have my Windows installed media. In this case, Windows 32-bit is what I'm building from, for reasons I already mentioned. I'm going to go underneath wallpaper and make sure it's pointing to the wallpaper I want. In this case, my mascot, 800 by 600. You can also choose things like its positioning, whether that stretch, what the background color is, all that. And when you write scripts, you can configure all that. You can actually configure the GUI for configuring the script. All right. The help file I was mentioning before, this is something I got from that Paraglider project. If I go into the right directories, there's a nice little Windows help in there that has tons of information about how scripting works and more information on WinBuilder. If you start writing your own scripts for getting some weird app to run, this is going to be invaluable to you. So I figure it's at least worth mentioning. All right. When you finally hit play and you start building everything out, it'll look something like this. I've already made all my tweaks I showed you in the previous couple videos. I fire up WinBuilder. Sometimes when I make any major edits, I'll have to close WinBuilder and bring it back up to make sure it sees those edits. But I have WinBuilder here. I can configure what scripts I want. I have best emulation chosen there as what I want it to test the ISO in. And I also have it set to automatically write to the USB drive. My USB drive when I was doing this video was the L drive. Although it wasn't, it was the F drive. It's been a few weeks since I've canned these videos. Hit play, make a prayer to the demo gods, and hope for the best. Now, I spent an inordinate amount of my life watching a blue line cross the screen, at least until Windows did that. Then it started being a green line crossing the screen. Big difference. Alright, so I cut a large section of that out while it was just compiling and running the scripts. Here, that format I mentioned before popped up. I chose quick format and what drive to format, and it just is formatting that flash drive for me. After that's done, you may notice down here on the bottom, there's a little Windows VM icon. grub4dos comes up next. I'm going to choose where to install grub4dos. I choose my thumb drive again. Just hit install and OK past the console window that pops up. Back to that VM I was mentioning before. You notice that VMware icon down on my task bar? That's because that ISO was booted up in VMware while everything else was going on. I'm going to show it off here in a second. But there's VMware up. It's booted from the ISO, and I can play around and test it. You can see I have a few things in there like Ghost and Malwarebytes and Opera, and I think the Tor browser bundle. And I'm trying to think of the next thing I'm going to show. Oh, the ISO. When you generate the ISO, it's going to be in a subdirectory of the whatever directory you have WinBuilder in, just called ISO. And that ISO you can burn with whatever burning software you're used to using.
I understand that multiple accesses to a USB drive, like booting from it, tends to
slowly wear it down?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a couple of thumb drives that are acting awfully slow for that. One of the things that is nice about WinBuilder, and I think this is a feature of Windows PE directly, it uses some called WIM file, and essentially it's an image that gets loaded up into memory, and you're actually sort of, after a certain point, booting from memory. It like copies it off the drive, puts it in memory, and you can actually pull the thumb drive out. Now, depending on where you put your tools and how you set up WinBuilder to put your tools in different locations, you may also lose your tools because you just pulled out where they're at, but you can also set it to where the tools all run from memory. So after you boot from it, you can pull the drive. And it does various things like that and tries to use memory for that part of the operating system so it doesn't have to constantly write out the drive. Because not only would that be slow, but it would have that wear issue that you mentioned. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's one of the reasons it creates that little RAM drive and uses a WIM file and loads that in there. Alright, that's the USB creation. Now, in theory, that should all work. In that demo I just showed, it did work. But let's say for some reason you get an error message as you're doing this. Like you get this particular error message. Oh, BCD edit was not found. Huh. Well, I need to go take care of that. So I drop out to Explorer, grab the files I need, and these files I have highlighted right now should automatically get grabbed in whatever platform you're on, but just since they don't, I think I'll show you where they're at. BCD edit, that's only for Windows 632. That, at least on 64-bit Windows, I have to copy it. I grab it and I put it in the Tools folder. All these folder paths are in the documentation I have up on my website and also in the slides. So anybody wants the slides, like I said, after the talk, they'll have all those paths in there. You see a bunch of errors in the log file because I didn't have the files in the right place. So if you get those error messages, step back a second and make sure those files are where they're supposed to be. Also, occasionally, there's different versions of the tools out there for messing around with WIM files I was mentioning earlier. If you run one of the tools before the other, it loads certain libraries that keeps the first tool from running. When that happens, the easiest solution is just to reboot the machine, and you should be able to get going. Now, a few words on scripts. There's tons of scripts already out there, but let's say you want to create your own. You can do as such. And this is a really crude demo of some really crude scripts that I've done myself. Essentially, I look at other people's scripts and figure out, oh, what's this code doing? Look at Paraglider's documentation and try to figure it out. But I went into Tools, and I can go into Script Creation. I can choose the folder I want to create my script in. This is just basically hierarchy for keeping everything organized. I want to make a quick script for Disk Digger. It's a nice little file carving tool for looking at formatted disks and and they want formatted full format. You can extract stuff off of them, like pictures and the documents and whatnot. But I essentially set all the settings to Disk Digger. I also point it towards the exe, and I want to pack the exe inside the script. And it does some kind of like base64 encoding. So the script is not only the code for saying how to install it, but it actually has the binary embedded inside the script. Now if I load this up again, that script should appear in my tree view on the left. And you see I have Disk Digger in there. I can go edit that. I'm playing it first. Hit play just to test, make sure it works. I'm going to go, before it actually makes the ISO, it writes it out to the target directory. I can actually look there to make sure the files get placed where they're supposed to be when it eventually gets put to an ISO or USB. And it seems to put Disk Digger there. Drop back a few. And I'm going to edit that. Looks like the script's probably going to run. But let's see what's actually in the script. You see the exe has been attached to the script. We'll have to view the source here in a second. I can add more files to automatically get extracted. You can also make a 7-zip file so you can extract more than one file at a time. Just put them all in one big archive. Right there, the unpack command will unpack just that exe. But let's say for some reason I had a zip file in there. I could use unpacked folder and name the zip file, and it would unpack everything inside that. I use that for things like, let's say you want to get all of Neo's tools in there. You can zip them all up in one 7-zip file, attach them to the script, and that one command will automatically do all the extracting for you, which is handy. I don't think I'm really getting that across verbally, but read the documentation, it'll give you a better idea. Just a more convenient way if you have a ton of different files you have to add. All right, a few key tools. That was like a very simple way of writing scripts yourself. I didn't go into writing a GUI so that people can configure and change the scripts as they wish. But if you don't ever want to write scripts, there's still tons of useful tools out there you may want to look at. A few pre-made scripts you want to look at is like Run Scanner. Paraglider makes Run Scanner. Essentially, it's a set of tools for mounting the or loading up the registry that's on the hard drive in the machine into your booted WinBuilder install, so that you can do various things like search for malware at different start points and whatnot. And it's a great use for that. So if you have to run some kind of anti-malware tool, you're probably going to be using Run Scanner with it, so it mounts everything off of the host OS. Sal's password renewal is really cool. It'll look for installs on the local hard drive of Windows and actually sit there and edit the registry files to install a service that the next time it boots, it'll either change an administrator password on the local machine or create a new administrator password. So if you need access to a box, you can boot from that, use Sal's password renewal, and just start creating yourself admin accounts. Ali Joel has a bunch of cool scripts. He keeps a fairly up-to-date Firefox script if you want to have Firefox on your boot CD or USB. Wireshark's out there as well, and also NetScan, which is a tool I like for auditing open file shares. Of course, antivirus. There's probably a bunch of other antivirus tools out there. Malwarebytes also if you want to search for spyware. Did you have a question? Oh, sorry. Just saying hello. How you doing? All right, sources for even more scripts. Like I said, if you don't really want to write your own scripts, someone else has probably written one out there. Though sometimes they may have written one for a slightly different distribution, which I'll cover a little bit here in a second. So it may not work. You may still have to edit it a little bit to work for you. Reboot Pro, though, that's the main site for all this WinBuilder development. People post scripts in the forums all the time, so you have to go out to those scripts forum and do a search for whatever it is you want. If it's a really popular application, it might already be out there. Ali Joe keeps a script collection on his website, so you have to email him for the download links. So sometimes he posts those on the Reboot forums. He has a mega pack of a ton of different tools, along with his own custom version of Windows 7 PE, just the tools he likes. I don't like all the same tools he likes, so I like to grab his pack, then just copy out the things I like, and make my own settings. There's other projects out there. For instance, I'm trying to think of what it's called. There's like Vista PE. There's Leopard is this multi-PE Leopard, and these are all based around WinBuilder, but they're slightly different, so you might put files in different locations. So the scripts may or may not work if you just grab them and try to put them in Windows 7 PE. But I've had pretty good luck with that. So I'd go out to their repositories, and they had a script that I wanted that wasn't in Windows 7 PE SE. I just grab it, put it in, and most of the time it works. Oh, and Paraglider, who I keep mentioning over and over again, he also has some scripts out on his website. Now, if you don't want to write these scripts, and there's not one out there, look around for portable apps. Generally, if it's a portable app that will run off a thumb drive, you just copy the files to your thumb drive after you've made your install media, and you can still run it. It may not be nicely in the menu system, but it's still functional. Near's tools are awesome. Near has this little Near launcher, so you can have all his tools in one place. Who said has ever used any Near's tools? All right, Near has tons of tools out there for figuring out what's going on in the system, recovering passwords, or looking at what an exe is doing on the system as far as like DLL calls or where in the registry it's editing stuff. Really handy. Wireshark, there's also a portable version of that, so if you don't use the Wireshark plugins, or the Wireshark plugins are way out of date because the developer out on the Reboot Pro lost interest, you can go out to Wireshark's website and just download one. Download the portable app, and it seems to function just fine. There's also the Tor browser bundle. I'm a big fan of Tor, so that's something I have a tendency to throw out on my thumb drive. All right, a little bit of information about Run Scanner. As I was mentioning before, Run Scanner is a tool for sitting there, and you boot from your USB or your CD, and you can say, okay, point at this Windows installation on the hard drive, load its registry, and I'm going to scan it with whatever tool I'm about to load. But there's tons of different problems that can happen to that, so there's tons of different options with Run Scanner. There's options for saying, okay, when you initially load from my registry of my system that's running, wait 10 seconds, then load the registry off the C drive. And you can have it automatically go out and try to find the Windows install, so it's more automated. Just a ton of different features. And me sitting here reading all those would be incredibly boring. But it's all out there, and like I said, it's in the notes for anybody that wants it. If you're using some of Near's tools, a lot of this stuff automatically has to look in the mounted registry, so you may have to use Run Scanner to get it to run properly. But also a lot of Near's tools will let you point towards what Windows install you want to use it with, or what, in this case, a Firefox profile you want to use it with. Here has a Firefox password recovery tool. In this case, I pointed it towards Firefox on the C drive. C drive got taken up by someone else when I booted from this device, so my C drive on that machine is now my E drive when I was booted from the USB. I pointed towards where my default profile was for Firefox. I pointed it towards where Firefox was on the machine, and it's able to recover passwords from there. Now, all my passwords are red squigglies, and that's a very secure password because it's really hard for other people to type that. But you get the idea. It's not a passphrase, it's a pass squiggly. A few other WinBuilder projects out there. I'm using Windows 7 PE SE. I tell you the truth, there might be a better project that's even better, even closer fit my needs, but I haven't looked at them all. Here's a few of them I want to mention. Naughty PE. And this one uses XP as a source. And it's called Naughty PE, and one of its main claims to fame is it tries to be very good at multimedia support. I'll let you all decide what it was designed for. Windows FE. This is a WinBuilder forensics environment that someone's run. It seems to be based around Windows 7 PE SE, so you grab scripts from it, they'll probably just work. But that's out there for anybody who wants to do kind of some forensics work. Ali Joe has its own project, as I was mentioning before, and it also seems to be built around Windows 7 PE. And there's also a multi-PE, which if there's some little security tool or some kind of snooping tool I need that I can't find anyplace else, their archive is huge. So I recommend looking at them. Okay, alternative ways to add files besides just scripts. And a few other little tips. You can add files without writing your own scripts. One way is to go underneath the plug-in additional files, and essentially you can open up the directory where you need to put stuff and throw the files there, and it will come up in the corresponding directory on your ISO later on when you boot from it. The way you generally do that is you click on a directory example, actually, and it'll show you the layout. I grab that, copy it all. I click on open source directory, paste it all into there. Now I have my paths already laid out so I know where it's going to be on the ISO. I just put the files there and I want to write my own scripts. That's fine for like standalone EXEs. That WMI file I keep mentioning, sorry, I think that's supposed to have been a WIM file, a little typo in there. Not Windows Management Instrumentation. If you want to edit that, you can. You can actually mount it into your own file system and edit it directly if you like. And for some things, that might actually be useful. Unfortunately, a lot of these scripts are going to be pointing towards certain drives that you're going to need to use. So, like I said, I want to put a shortcut on my desktop. Well, my F drive wasn't their F drive, and I couldn't easily create a shortcut for something that doesn't currently exist on my machine. So what I did was I used the subs command. It's been around since DOS, 3.2? It's been around forever, to say, make the Y drive be equivalent to the F drive, and then I made my shortcut, put it in that WIM file, and I was going. Alright, let's say you want to save your WinBuilder projects later. Obviously doing this build process every single time you want to create a new thumb drive would be a pain because it takes a while to run, even on a decent system. So many tools it has to grab. There's a couple ways you can do that. What I generally do is I grab all the files off of the generated thumb drive, zip them up, and I keep that. Then whenever I want to deploy to a new thumb drive, I just unzip it to that new thumb drive, and I use grub for DOS and just rewrite the bootloader. And since I already copied all the configuration files, they're all there, and it just works very well. Another option is to use Xboot and take the ISO and use it to write out WinBuilder to the thumb drive. And I'm going to show a video of that here in a second. A final option you can do is do a DD image, but that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of space, and it's going to do the entire drive, even parts of the drive that's aren't in use. So I wouldn't recommend that one. Alright, Xboot is pretty nifty. It's a tool for creating multi-boot ISOs and USB drives. So essentially you can just throw a bunch of ISOs into it, and it will amalgamate all of them into one, which is really, really cool. You can go there and edit categories, edit how you want them to show up in the menu, and it's really nifty, and it's underneath active development. There was a few months there where things didn't seem to work right. I think maybe he was busy at school or whatever, because there was bugs that weren't fixed, but these last few weeks he just seems to be putting out new versions all the time. So if you have a bug, contact him, he might very well fix it. This is the most convenient way I found to dual boot Backtrack 5 and Win7 PE at the same time. Alright, here's a quick demo of this, and I have till 2? Or?
Yeah.
Cool. I should be able to complete that in plenty of time. Alright, here's a quick demo using Xboot. You fire up Xboot, and you just have this pane here. Well, you can go grab some ISO files, and I'm going to create a huge multi-boot USB drive. You can also create an ISO that you can burn to a DVD later, but like I said, I find thumb drive so much more convenient. Alright, so I dragged and dropped my Windows 7 PE ISO into there, and I'm going to choose Windows PE, and the option that said Windows 7 PE based on Windows 7. Actually, let me rewind just the slightest bit. Might be helpful if I pause that. You'll see there's tons of different options in here. Different ISOs have to be booted in different ways, and it knows how to put the right things in the configuration file to make them work. For Windows 7 PE SE, I found that this works. Choosing PE, MS.ERD, Windows Vista, and 7 only. If you use Ultimate Boot CD for Windows, who has ever used that? For that, you're going to have to use the line 1 down, Windows XP only. And it seems to work fine in there. It copies everything to memory, but it seems to work fine. But there's tons of other options for different Linux distributions. Based on the file name, sometimes it will just automatically choose the right options to load. Like when I drag and drop Backtrack in there, it'll automatically just put it in the right location. Or it'll automatically just choose the right profile. I didn't like the name it gave me by default, so I'm going in there and editing it. I also removed category because I want my initial boot menu not to have submenus. I want all my options right there in my face. So I removed Linux from category so it's not in a Linux submenu. But you notice when I drag and drop Backtrack 5 in there, it automatically just selected the correct profile for me. Another option you can choose, and it just breezed on past that. I'm going to pause it in a second. You can use Grub for DOS's ISO emulation. If you really have no idea how to get an ISO to boot from the thumb drive, sometimes you can use Grub for DOS's ISO emulation, and it'll put the ISO on there, and it will act kind of like a virtual CD-ROM drive and try to boot from that ISO directly. Now, it has to do it in some kind of like file defragmentation to the ISO file when it goes to the thumb drive to make sure it's all continuous. But depending on what you're trying to load, that will probably work pretty well. Oh, of course, DBAN. There's a special version of DBAN you have to download to get it to work, but he has links to that whenever you try to run Xboot. Tails. Tails is a low distribution of Linux that's meant for privacy. The Amnesic Incognito Live System, I believe it stands for. Ultimate Boot CD for Windows. This one is kind of an XP-based PE device, boot CD, but it has so many utilities on it already pre-built. I usually copy it to my thumb drive as well. Eventually I have them all there, and I can even choose to create USB or create an ISO. Oh, underneath QEMU, you can set how you want it to emulate it. You can also choose to rewrite your Grub for DOS bootloader if you somehow lose it. But you see there I'm creating create USB. I put it towards my thumb drive. I tell it how I want to boot, what a bootloader I want to use. In this case, I chose the default SysLinux, and it generates it for me. Now, I just cut out a huge section because that was going to take forever and a day. But you see, it loaded up in QEMU a test of my new boot thumb drive. And you saw the menu system. Hopefully I'll have some time to show a live boot here in a second. Now, let's say you don't like his default layout of the menu system, or you want to put your own icons in there. You can do that. Oh, also, if later on, after you've generated your thumb drive, you want to add a new distribution. Like, in this case, I think I ended up wanting to add gparted to my USB. I can just drag it in there, and despite the fact it's not there in the file system, it won't, if I do a new create USB, it doesn't overwrite the configuration already on the thumb drive, it just adds to it. So now I have gparted on there also, so I can do all my partitioning work on the hard drive. I mean, it's really convenient to walk around with something this size that costs like $22. It has 16 gigs of space, and has tons and tons of different boot options. And there's my QEMU demo again. All right, let's say you want to edit what the background looks like in the boot menu. You can do that by going into the SysLinux folder, edit the config file, change menu layout, change the order of things. But you can also go in there and, in one of the mini configuration files, choose what background image you want to use. Or I just use the Xboot background image and edit it to have my own logo in it if I want. Now, I'm not going to have demo this in great detail, but who has ever heard of Konboot? Konboot is this tool that you can boot from a floppy or a CD-ROM drive, and on some limited hardware, a thumb drive. And what it does is it acts as an intermediate, and then when it boots Windows or Linux, it modifies things in memory space to where either you have a blank password or a certain known password and you can just log into a system. I've had mixed results getting it to work from a thumb drive. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I have documentation on my website which I have gotten to work on some machines on Windows 7 SP1 32-bit, never 64-bit. I've gotten it to work, but it doesn't always work. So I submit for your approval. Give it a shot if you want to play around with those tools. Usually, Solid's password renewal for my particular tasks is just as good, but if you want to leave even less tracks, Konboot might be something worth looking into, depending on what the host OS is. And I have instructions out there for modifying the SysLinux config so you can load Konboot from a thumb drive. All right, other distros of interest. I already mentioned gparted. Anybody here use gparted? That's an awesome distro if you want to get in there and like resize partitions, add new partitions. I just love it. Windows FE, which I already mentioned, is for forensics. Basically, Windows 7 PE distribution built just for forensics. Highland Boot CD, which I'm not going to link to because it has some serious pirated software in there, but some people highly recommend it for system recovery.
It works really well.
It works really well, but at the same time, there's some questionable legality there, I dare say. Was that? Of course, Ultimate Boot CD for Windows, which I mentioned several times, is nice. And for making bootable USBs really easily, if you're just going to do work with imaging, Symantec has their own thing if you license their product. All right, a few links to some more resources for people that want to mess around with this technology. I have my WinBuilder Windows 7 SE. This is a really hard string of characters to say. Windows 7 PE SE tutorial out there, which pretty much has a text version of most of the things I've mentioned in this talk. I have another talk that I did recently on just general boot devices, where I go into more details on other things besides just WinBuilder. And I also talk about using the U3 partition on your thumb drive as a read-only space. So all those tools that automatically get deleted every time you pop your thumb drive into a machine don't get deleted because what the machine sees is only read-only. So that's nifty. And there's good tools out there for manipulating the U3 side of your thumb drive. My guide to using Konboot from the USB. Reboot Pro, got to check them out, because they have more information on how WinBuilder works and how to solve various problems in any other form out there. Unfortunately, the default scan really sucks. It may look pretty, but I was looking around like, where the hell's the search button? How am I going to find anything here? So change the default scan, definitely. If anybody's interested in Bart's PE Builder, I have a tutorial that's pretty dated, but it's out there. And if you're ever wondering what's going to be the best thumb drive to buy to actually boot from, Nia has this nifty site called USB Speed, where people who have used this USB debug utility and who have submitted scores can basically test their own thumb drives, upload the score, and you have this huge collection of the statistics on different thumb drives to give you some idea of who might be faster than who. Okay, booting demos if I have time. I only have one machine right now because my other one is host, so I still have about 10 minutes.
Yeah, you got 6 or 7 minutes.
All right, I'm going to say a few things real quick as far as thanks. Thanks to OISF for having me here. My buddies at DerbyCon and the ISD podcast. A few events that are coming up. DerbyCon, hope you all can make it. The Louisville InfoSec, which has happened the day before, and a ton of other conferences I go to that I'd highly recommend going to if you have the opportunity.
DEF CON.
We won't cover questions yet because I want to try to see if I can actually get this device to boot in my very limited time. So let's see what happens. What's the worst?
Flames.
Yeah, actually, I'll probably start the boot process because unfortunately, the distro I have on this thumb drive, I've loaded so many different drivers and tools on it, it takes a while to boot. But I can at least show you the basics of it. I'm going to hit escape on this one to bring up the choose boot device option. Boot from the USB. Oh, good. Surely this laptop doesn't have a problem with
No, that's the projector there. Seeing that's Dell projector.
Does Dell projector have a problem with?
It's searching for the signal. You haven't put out a video signal yet.
All right, folks. Well, if anybody wants to see what the menu looks like later on,
It's right here.
you know what I did last time I had a demo like this? I actually had a webcam sitting there watching the screen. That's what I should have set up this time around. But as I booted from there, I have my little boot menu. You can all see that back there, can't you?
Increase the font.
I can choose Windows 7 PE, and eventually its boot menu comes up. Choose it, and eventually I'll start booting a cut-down version of Windows 7.
See if that's putting out a video now that it's booted.
Yeah.
Well, we can try.
Did you hit your
Well,
F10 button or F4 button?
Well, but use that. That's not going to. Well, the operating system's not booted up enough the way I think that's what.
Well, it's the BIOS that sends that out.
On my other laptop, it's not though. I'm not. Well, we'll try it.
Wherever you're.
Yeah, it's not making a difference at this point, I don't think.
No.
But thanks for the suggestion.
You can be full of that.
What is that?
Just being smart.
Yeah, I never had luck with that. On all locks I've had, I never had luck with that key combination until after the OS is booted pretty much. Either that or I hook up the machine and I boot from it while it's connected to the projector and it automatically just recognizes it. But for whatever reason, it didn't do that this time around. I'm going to try that booting right now while it's hooked up. Yeah, anybody wants to see that part of the demo is pretty much going to have to come see me. But hope you all found that useful. Is there any questions?
What's an average build time on your machine?
Oh, I never actually set that with a stopwatch. I'm going to guess, depending on how much stuff I load, anywhere between 15 and 30, 45 minutes.
That's not bad.
It really does depend on how fast your machine is. And I'm trying to work on ways around that. I got a new machine I need to test out with. I'm going to see about loading all my source files into a RAM drive and see if that makes it any quicker. There's some other tweaks. I asked on the reboot forums for some ideas on how to speed it up. And I started getting some ideas, and then a huge flame war broke out between people about, well, what are you doing for the project, and what are you doing for the project? And I kind of lost track of the answers I was being given. Yes?
Did you say your slides will be up on your website?
Oh, yes. And the tutorial for how to do this, a text tutorial is already out there. But yeah, these slides will hopefully, along with this video, will hopefully be out on my website very shortly.
Thank you.
Is that on your menu there that you can follow easily?
Mm-hmm.
On your website? Is it on your menu?
Yeah, it's going to be underneath the video section.
Okay.
There's a bunch of tabs at the top in video. You can it should be at the top of the video list. And also, if you go check my website out, like next week, it'll probably be one of the top links on the front page. Any other questions? All right, thank you for your time.